Hey guys, this is Mel, and I'm here to talk about the originals, episode 408, titled Voodoo in My Blood, which premiered Friday, May 12, 2017 on the CW. It is May 19th that I'm recording this on, so it's about a week. It's a few hours before 409 airs, though, so I didn't get a chance beforehand to record this. So with that said, guys, huge spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the episode already, go do so first, and then come back and see what I have to say about the episode. Also, this episode is going to spoil what has happened over back on the Vampire Diaries, since this is the crossover episode with Alaric making an appearance. So just a quick heads up there as well. Otherwise, my other video reminders are up on screen right now. Take a moment to read over those. And with that said, let's start with the 10-minute clock. And let's begin with what happened in this episode. But quick little thing though, guys. Just want to point out that sometimes I am unobservant and then sometimes I am observant, but thanks to Tumblr, I saw a very clear view in the previous episode of Haley and Hope both having their crescent marks on the same shoulder, as well as the photo showing Haley's father having his crescent mark in the same place. When I originally watched the episode for the first time, I didn't notice it either. I was writing a quote down or I turned my head the wrong way, but I didn't notice it. But Tumblr, thank you for that wonderful website. Likes to make connections and point things out, and I saw that during my week of updating the page for 407. So just a big little heads up for about that. So anyways, back to the 408 though. So timeline wise, I picked up that it was the next day, or I'm assuming it's the next day from what happened in 407. And storyline wise, I caught on to two major storylines going on. First one having to deal with answers from the ancestors, and the second one being retrieving of the bone fragment. Now, in regards to getting answers from the ancestors, we get that through Davina, who returns to speak to Klaus and Haley as a spokesperson for the ancestors. And through Davina, we find out the history behind the Hollow. We actually get flashbacks pertaining to the Hollow's time as a human back in 500 AD. Now, this is 500 years before the creation of vampires, before the Michaelsons were humans. So 500 years that way. We found out that before her death, the Hollow, aka Inadu, cursed those present for her death with the werewolf curse. And her mother became the first of the Crescent Wolves, which is why Haley is a weakness to the Hollow, because she's a descendant of Inadu herself. And also it turns out that Inadu, because she was so powerful, was because she was the product of a unification ceremony between her parents, who were two very powerful witches from two separate covens. And all the elders from both covens had kind of, throughout the pregnancy, kind of blessed the child, and that kind of resulted in Inadu, and she became the Hollow because of everything that she sucked the life out, pretty much. Now, apparently to entube the Hollow, though, a very powerful sacrifice was needed to be made, and Davina wanted this to be Klaus, but thankfully Hope stopped her from completing this plan of hers. Now, with the second storyline, with retrieving the bone fragment, that's where Alaric Saltzman comes in. Now, he's collected the fragment that the Lockwood family was guarding, because they were part of the Apici bloodline, the one that Freya got the name off of from Dominic in the previous episode. So with that, Alaric tries to make the trip to New Orleans to pass off the bone, because he doesn't want any trouble going to Mystic Falls, where he has a life and a family there, and people he wants to protect. So anyways, with this though, Alaric brings up two bloodline names that are protectors of the bone fragments. One being Livejournal, which is Haley's family, and then another one being Del Robles. So Elijah and Marcel go to the Del Robles crypt to get the fragment buried with them. But Sophia, who is possessed by the Hollow, she intervenes, and she ends up taking that fragment with her. Now, I don't know if the Hollow also managed to get the bone piece that the Lockwood family was protecting, because Alaric kind of made a comment that had me thinking that she also took it too. So anyways, the last scene of the episode shows a possessed Sophia stabbing Elijah in the back with a stake that was infused with the thorns that the Hollow had created, that could kill an original. So there's that. Tidbit wise though, we find out that the Livejournal blood specifically is the Hollow's weakness, because of the fact that it is blood descended from the Hollow itself, from Inadu. Also, we find out that Alaric gives Klaus some fatherly advice as well as an open invitation for Hope to attend his special school for magical children, one that he established in the series finale of The Vampire Diaries. And he also comments on the fact that his 2 twin daughters, who are siphon witches, they're actually thriving and flourishing at this school of his. So there's that. We also see Hope has been learning magic from Freya through her books and as well as through a trial and error process as well, which he tells Alaric when he asks how she's learned all this magic, since he's impressed by her knowledge. We also see Marcel telling Elijah that he will never forgive him for ripping out his heart 5 years ago, and Elijah doesn't expect him to from the sounds of it. And also we learn that Elijah sees happiness in a small countryside village in France, and he hopes he can take Haley there one day when all the dust settles over this problem of theirs. So there is that. Most shocking moment of the episode, let's move on to that. I think it has to be the fact that the Hollow was the one who created the werewolf curse. All this time I kind of thought since werewolves were already present and accounted for when the vampires were created, I thought maybe it was nature who had created the werewolf, and it was just the people themselves who had started calling it a curse because it felt like a curse to them. But essentially, this episode truly shows that it was a curse. The Anadu came from a coven of witches, and she cursed all of those who were present into werewolves. So essentially, they were all witches at one point. So it was very surprising, yet it was kind of refreshing and kind of exciting to get that kind of a creation story, I guess you could say. Moving on, though, top 3 favorite moments. First one I have to say was seeing Alaric Saltzman again. This crossover appearance of his actually marks his 100th episode appearance between the Vampire Diaries and the Originals universe. So that was awesome to see. It was great to see his 2 interactions with Klaus, both over the phone as well as in person with the fatherly advice and just the weird banter, because you can't forget that the first time these 2 actually met was when Klaus was possessing Alaric so that he can kind of spy on Elena and the gang back in season 2 of the Vampire Diaries. So just interesting to see how far they've come and just how they're on the same side now, so to speak. It was also great to see Alaric's interaction with Hope and how he, what his impressions of her were, and just how in awe he was to see how the littlest Michelson is so different from the Michelson family he spent years fighting against. So that was pretty cool as well. Also, Alaric's moment with his car when he was facing off against the possessed Sophia, the fact that he got thrown away, he had his crossbow ready, but that didn't stop him. Yes, he got thrown away. And then he says that he rigged his car with C4, and instead of shooting at Sophia, who he thought was a heretic, he shoots the car just so that it would explode in taking her with it. So Alaric just continues to remind me that for a human, he is still a badass as ever, and I love seeing him again for sure. Another favorite moment of mine has to be the fact that Hope defeated Davina to save Klaus. Hope was willing to let the ancestors help her family because he said that they were going to help, but the moment that they turned against her and lied to her pretty much, Hope was not going to have any of it, and then she was just like, no, you lied to me and you have to pay for this now. And it was just really great to see her determination in that moment and her fierce protectiveness of her family, especially of her father, it was fantastic to see. I love that. The third favorite moment for me I had in this episode was Marcel's words to Davina when he visits her grave. Essentially, he's pretty much speaking to nothing, but we see that Davina is actually there hearing all this, and I thought it was a great moment for them to have. I kind of wish that they two had a little more time in each other's presence without the threat of needing to kill one of them in the midst. But I think the words said, it's been a week now, so I'm a little hazy on what was actually said though, but I remember thinking that it was a great moment for them to have for sure. Moving on though, top 3 peeved moments. I only have the one, and it was the fact that the possessed Sophia got the drop on Elijah in the end. Kind of disappointed because of the fact that Elijah, with his enhanced senses, both in hearing and sight and smell, he should have been able to pick up that something was wrong, especially when he saw Marcel's door open. Instead of investigating, he should have just been on high alert and maybe just walked away. Because I don't think, even if Sophia was possessed by the Hollow, I think she still would have given off the same sounds she would have, or the same indicators of her presence than if it was just the Hollow's smoky presence. That would have probably gotten the drop on Elijah a lot better. But the fact that she just got him was just annoying, especially when he was there to apologize to Marcel. So there's that. Moving on, though, to what will I remember most when I look back on this episode, the origin story for the Hollow as well as for the creation of the werewolf. Of course, pretty much the flashbacks and getting that story was really great to have. I was a little confused, even though it's great to see Davina again, sure, but it kind of didn't fit right. I would have expected getting an ancestor who was actually from that time, from 500 AD, that was actually present during the Hollow's time, telling them the story about what happened, instead of Davina being like the mouthpiece that they were seeing. Even though it was great to see her again, but it just, for me, it didn't make sense. If you're gonna tell a story about what happened, it has to be someone who's actually there and not from word of mouth, and that's what you've heard the legend from. Like back on the Vampire Diaries, when we found out the tale of Amara, Silas, and Ketsia, it was Ketsia who was telling the story about it. And then when you hear about the tale of the Sirens in Arcadius for the Vampire Diaries as well, it's through the Sirens and Cade that you're hearing the story from them. It's not from a familiar face that's just sending the message. So it was a little weird, even though it was great to see Davina again. It's just a mixed message, but I still like the fact that we finally got a backstory like this about the Hollow. Moving on, though, to random questions. Since the timer did go off, I'm going to try to go as quickly as I can, though. But the first question was the fact that if the Hollow was the product of two powerful covens joining together through a unification spell, one that the werewolves have continued to adopt it, as if you remember, what makes her different from Hope, who has 3 supernatural species coursing through her blood? I'm a little confused by that. Like, what makes her different? But essentially, after finding out the origin of the werewolf curse, essentially Hope is purely witch, and then the fact that she just happened to inherit any vampire qualities or werewolf qualities is because of the type of infection that both her parents have acquired through their time, since vampires came from witches, essentially, because the Michelson family were descendants of witches, and then the werewolves were all witches because they were part of the same coven. So essentially, what is the difference between Hope and the Hollow if they were both products of very powerful people? Next question. If the Hollow needs a powerful sacrifice to bring forth her resurrection, then how can a powerful sacrifice be used to entomb her, which is what Davina was hoping for if she killed Klaus? I mean, essentially, if you give a powerful sacrifice, you're giving the Hollow what she needs to resurrect herself. And then after doing so, that same sacrifice is supposed to help entomb her? Or do you need 2 powerful sacrifices? One to ensure her resurrection, and then the second one to entomb her after she's resurrected. I don't know. I was a little confused by that, though, since they both need the same thing to achieve their goal, but yet doing that one thing could lead to either or. There has to be more to it than entombing her, than a powerful sacrifice, or entombing her in order to resurrect her. There has to be more to it. Next question. How did Hope get to the church? It's a little small thing, I know, but like the fact that everyone that was supposed to take care of Hope was already in the church. She was back at the compound. The only person we didn't see in the episode was Freya, but I doubt she would have taken her to the church if she knew that that's where danger was. So I'm wondering, how exactly did Hope get there? Because I doubt the church is across the street from the compound, right? So there's that question there. And also, last question. So if the werewolves were originally witches, like how the originals were originally witches before they became vampires, is that meant to mean something, or was it just a coincidence that they both had that shared witch quality between them? Like, would the Michelsons still have been turned into vampires if they didn't have any ounce of witch blood in them, courtesy of Esther, or did having witch blood in them ensure that they were able to be turned into vampires? But then now thinking that over, then Michael wouldn't have been possible because he wasn't a witch. So I'm a little confused there, but I'm wondering if that was purposely meant for the fact that witches can be turned into other creatures, or if it's just a coincidence that the first werewolves and the first vampires just so happened to be witches beforehand, or descendants of witches beforehand, with the exclusion of Michael. And if that's the case, is there a significance behind Michael being the odd one out, so to speak, in the creation origin story? And I'm just babbling, and maybe I'm more confusing myself, though I do apologize about that. But let's move on to predictions, though, very quickly. Based off the promo for 409, it looks like Sophia, possessed by the Hollow, has Elijah as his prisoner, who is meant to be her sacrifice back to life. It looks like Klaus, Haley, and Marcel rush to save Elijah. Now, based off the synopsis for the episode, the headline is a surprising alliance and a heartbreaking sacrifice. Already right there, I'm not feeling too good about that, though. But it reads that when the Hollow sends a terrifying message to Vincent, he must team up with Haley and Freya to embark on a desperate mission to stop the Hollow once and for all, even if it means a heartbreaking sacrifice. Refusing to allow anyone in his family to pay the high price of defeating their enemy, Klaus makes a surprising alliance and enacts a plan that threatens to change the Michelson family forever. Elijah and Marcel are also set to appear. Now, before I go into any predictions on that, any news I want to share is the fact that the Originals was renewed for season 5. So that's fantastic news. But it was revealed yesterday at the CW Upfronts that it will be returning as a mid-season show once again. So possibly it's only going to be 13 episodes once again, though. But I'm really excited to see what they have in store for season 5. So there's that, but back to what I think is going to happen in 409. I truly have no idea who the heartbreaking sacrifice will be. I tried a sneak peek in the synopsis for the 410, and it doesn't give it away. It doesn't give it away. One character is not mentioned at all, but I don't know if that's because they are the sacrifice or if it's truly because they just don't appear. But I will definitely have to wait to see tonight. In 2 hours, actually, if we actually see if there's anyone that is sacrificed or not. I hope not, because if there is a sacrifice, that means that the Hollow will be resurrected. So there's that. So what did you guys think of the episode? What did you guys like about it? What do you think is going to happen next? Let me know in the comments down below what you think. Also, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos if you haven't done so already. If you want, check out my Tumblr page. The link for that is down below. I read blog promos, web clips, quotes, gifs, synopses, news, all that good stuff, all found in one place, so go check that out. It's a work in progress, but I'm slowly getting back to it. It's also connected all to my WordPress account, which has everything I post online. So that's a little more organized, but again, it's a work in progress, so I do hope you check that out. If you want a more detailed recap of the episode, a play-by-play, if you will, check out my Livejournal entry. The link for that is down below. It is a play-by-play of the episode as I watch it for the first time, included with my in-moment thoughts, questions, and any quotes that I might have picked up while watching it. It's a great way to keep things organized for me, as well as keep things in check for order purposes. But you can check that out if you would like to have a look. It's going to be posted up shortly. I have to edit the format and coloring for it before then. But otherwise, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for your patience. I hope you come back next time to hear what I have to say about the next episode. But until then, guys, this is Mel. Wishing you all a great day, great week, wherever you are. Bye for now.